The tension in the auditorium was electric. Thousands of eyes flicked between the two figures on stage. One, a billionaire visionary who had built rockets, revolutionized electric cars, and dreamed of colonizing Mars. The other, an enigmatic actor whose presence alone could command a room. Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, smirking slightly, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. Humanity's survival depends on one thing: becoming a multiplanetary species. Technology is the ultimate answer. Everything else is noise, the audience murmured. Some nodded in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably. The moderator, a respected journalist, turned to the man sitting across from Musk. "Keanu?" she prompted. "Thoughts?" For a long moment, Keanu Reeves said nothing. He simply stared at Musk, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow inhale, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He spoke just one sentence, and in that instant the world changed. The entire room fell into an eerie silence. People stopped breathing, some gasped, others simply sat there, eyes wide, as if witnessing something they couldn't quite comprehend. Even Elon Musk, the man known for his sharp wit, his defiance in the face of doubters, froze. The confidence drained from his face. His fingers twitched slightly on the armrest. It was as if Keanu's words had struck something deep inside him, something undeniable. The journalist's pen slipped from her fingers. The cameraman zoomed in instinctively, capturing Musk's rare moment of speechlessness. In the audience, a tech entrepreneur dropped his phone. Somewhere in the back, a philosopher muttered, "My God." The internet was already ablaze. Within seconds, clips of Keanu's response were uploaded. Twitter exploded. Hashtags trended worldwide. But the world wasn't ready for what would come next, because what Keanu Reeves had just said wasn't just an answer. It was the answer. As the silence stretched on, Keanu's words echoed in every mind present. But the moment had only just begun. Elon Musk finally cleared his throat. He shifted in his seat, his usual bravado struggling to reassemble itself. "That's an interesting perspective," he said, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. "But do you really believe that? That the meaning of life isn't about pushing forward, about survival, about conquering the stars?" Keanu's expression softened, but his eyes remained intense. "I believe," he said, "that survival without meaning is just existing." The words landed like a quiet earthquake. Musk frowned, his analytical mind clearly racing, searching for a rebuttal. But Keanu wasn't finished. "When you strip away the rockets, the algorithms, the electric cars, when you take away all the noise, what are we left with?" he asked. "We're left with love, connection, the moments that take our breath away. We're left with a sunset that makes you pause, a laugh that stays with you for years, a kindness that changes someone's life." A young woman in the audience wiped away a tear. An older man, a retired scientist, nodded slowly, as if remembering something long buried under equations and calculations. Musk, usually quick with a counter-argument, hesitated, and that's when Keanu did something no one expected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, tattered note. "This," he said, holding it up, "was given to me by someone who changed my life. It has just 6 words on it." The audience leaned in, holding their breath. Musk's eyes narrowed. Keanu unfolded the note, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he read the words aloud. The moment those words left his lips, everything changed. Keanu Reeves looked out over the sea of faces, each one waiting, desperate to hear the words written on the fragile slip of paper. His fingers ran over the worn edges, as if feeling the weight of history within them. He took a slow breath and spoke. "You are here. That is enough." The words landed like a whisper against a storm, soft yet earth-shattering. The silence that followed was different this time, heavier. It wasn't the stunned hush of shock, nor the awkward pause of confusion. It was reverence. It was understanding. Elon Musk, the man who had built his empire on the idea that humanity's worth was tied to its ability to push forward, sat motionless. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but no words came. Somewhere in the back, a young coder who had spent the last 10 years chasing an impossible dream of immortality through AI broke down in quiet sobs. A woman who had sacrificed every relationship for her startup pressed her hand to her mouth, her eyes welling with unexpected emotion, because for the first time in their lives they considered the possibility that they were already enough, that they didn't have to earn existence, that simply being here, breathing, loving, feeling, was the point. Keanu let the silence settle before speaking again, his voice like a steady flame in the darkness. "I got this note from a janitor," he continued, his eyes distant as he remembered. "A man who swept the floors of a film set I was working on. He saw me one night, sitting alone, staring at my hands, lost in my own thoughts. Without a word, he handed me this. 6 words. And then he just walked away." He smiled softly. "I didn't understand it at first, but I kept it. And over time I realized this is what we forget. We chase the future, we fight for progress, but we forget the miracle of simply being here." He turned to Elon, his expression not one of challenge, but of compassion. "I admire what you've built. I respect your vision, but what if the answer isn't out there?" He gestured toward the sky. "What if it's right here?" Musk blinked, his fingers curled into a loose fist. He had spent decades believing that life had to be something more, that the value of existence was tied to how far one could push beyond it. That meaning came from expansion, from conquering, from becoming bigger. But now, for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure. Elon Musk's fingers tapped absently against his knee, a rare tell of unease. He had stood in front of world leaders, debated with the sharpest minds of his generation, and defied industries that swore he would fail. But this was different. He wasn't being challenged with data or logic. Keanu Reeves hadn't dismissed space exploration, nor had he argued against technology. Instead, he had given him something much harder to refute, a truth that wasn't based on progress, but presence. The audience remained frozen in their seats, eyes shifting between the two men as if watching a battle that had no clear winner or loser, only a shift in understanding. Then, finally, Musk spoke. "But isn't that giving up?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "If we just accept being here as enough, don't we stop reaching? Don't we lose our drive to improve?" Keanu shook his head, his expression calm, yet unwavering. "Not at all," he said. "You see, striving for more isn't the problem. The problem is when we believe we're less until we get there." A collective breath rippled through the crowd. Musk's jaw tightened slightly. He looked down, as if processing the weight of those words. His entire life, his empire, his identity, was built on the idea that humanity's survival depended on progress. That to stop moving was to stagnate, to fail. And yet, had he ever once stopped to simply exist? Had he ever believed that he himself, not his companies, not his technology, not his grand vision, was enough? He swallowed. For the first time in decades, he wasn't sure. From the front row, a woman stood. She was no billionaire, no scientist, no world leader, just a school teacher who had spent years believing she wasn't doing enough. I needed to hear that," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Then a man, an engineer from SpaceX, slowly removed his glasses, rubbing his face. So did I. One by one, hands began to rise, not with questions, but acknowledgments. Faces softened, eyes glistened. People who had spent their entire lives chasing something more suddenly felt, perhaps for the first time, the weight of their own presence. And in that moment, the conversation stopped being about two men on a stage. It became about everyone in the room. The cameraman, still recording, whispered, "This is going to change everything." And he was right. Within minutes, the moment had spread beyond the auditorium. Clips flooded social media. Headlines exploded across news sites. The video was reposted so many times that even the algorithm couldn't keep up. Keanu Reeves stuns Elon Musk into silence. His words will change you. Newspaper, you are here. That is enough. The 6 words that shook Silicon Valley. Musk finally meets his match. And it's not what you think. Celebrities retweeted it. Philosophers dissected it. Scientists debated it. Everyday people, students, workers, single parents, struggling artists, sat in front of their screens, reading those 6 words over and over. Some cried, some reflected, some just stopped. For the first time in years, a world obsessed with progress and productivity paused. And in that pause, something remarkable happened. Musk sat alone in his office, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the window. His phone buzzed, emails, calls, texts, investors asking about the next launch, engineers seeking his input, journalists wanting a statement. But for the first time in his life, he ignored them. Instead, he stared at the note in his hand. Keanu had given it to him after the panel ended, pressing the fragile slip of paper into his palm without a word. You are here. That is enough. Musk exhaled slowly. His entire life had been about pushing forward. A childhood spent proving himself. A career built on proving the world wrong. Even love, fleeting as it had been, was overshadowed by ambition. He had always told himself that once he reached the next milestone, he would finally feel satisfied, finally feel worthy. Yet here he was, one of the richest men on earth. And he had never once believed those 6 words. The realization was like a crack in the foundation of everything he had built. He leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking between the city below and the note in his hand. For the first time in decades, Elon Musk didn't know what to do next. Across the globe, something strange began to happen. Tech moguls started questioning their endless chase for innovation. Hustle culture. Influencers posted videos, eyes glassy, admitting, "I don't know who I am without the grind." A viral challenge started, You Are Here, where people filmed themselves pausing, truly pausing, to embrace the present moment. For some, it was as simple as watching the sunrise without reaching for their phones. For others, it was a call to step away from toxic careers, broken relationships, the relentless pressure to be more. Keanu Reeves, unknowingly or not, had sparked something bigger than a viral moment. He had started a reckoning. Elon Musk had always been in motion. Forward, faster, bigger. But now, sitting alone in his dimly lit office, he felt something foreign. Stillness. The note sat on his desk, its 6 words staring back at him like a challenge. You are here. That is enough. His fingers hovered over his keyboard, instinctively drawn to the world he controlled, the engineers, the algorithms, the launches. But tonight, for the first time in decades, he didn't open his work dashboard. He didn't check SpaceX's latest project. He didn't browse Twitter for an escape. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and let his mind wander. And what he found there shook him. Because beneath all his success, all his brilliance, all the ways he had changed the world, he couldn't remember the last time he had simply been. A memory surfaced. A quiet night long ago. He was still young then, working insane hours to keep Tesla afloat. His first son, Nevada, just a baby at the time, had been asleep in his crib. Musk had stood at the door, watching him breathe. That moment should have been enough. But even then, his mind had been elsewhere, on spreadsheets, on deadlines, on the pressure to be something more. And then Nevada was gone. A rare syndrome, a cruel, unstoppable fate. Musk had buried his grief under work, under ambition, under movement, because slowing down meant feeling, and feeling meant pain. But now, because of 6 words from a man who had lost nearly as much as he had, the walls Musk had built were cracking, his hands curled into fists. Had he spent his entire life running from himself? His phone rang, jolting him back. For a second, he almost ignored it. But something, intuition, fate, something else entirely, made him answer. Hello? A familiar voice, gentle, grounded. Keanu. I just wanted to say, Keanu's voice hummed through the speaker, I didn't mean to shake your world, but if it's shaking, let it. Elon let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Shaking is an understatement, he admitted, rubbing his temples. I've built my life on forward momentum. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to stop, Keanu said. You just have to know why you're moving. Musk was silent. Keanu chuckled softly, then asked, Tell me, Elon, if all the rockets, all the companies, all the progress disappeared tomorrow, who would you be? Musk opened his mouth, closed it. His throat tightened. I don't know. And that was the most honest thing he had ever said. Elon Musk had never been at a loss for words. His entire life had been a series of sharp retorts, grand visions, and bold declarations. But now, as Keanu's question echoed in his mind, who would you be without all of this? He felt something he hadn't felt since childhood. Fear, not the fear of failure. He had faced that before and conquered it, not the fear of losing everything. He had risked it all and won. No, this was something deeper, a primal existential fear, because what if he had never truly existed beyond the work? Keanu's voice was still on the line, calm, patient. You know, Keanu continued, I get it. I really do. After my fiancée died, after I lost my daughter, I threw myself into work too. Movies, training, anything to outrun the grief. Elon swallowed hard. But one day I realized something. No matter how far I ran, it was always there. The pain, the questions, the silence. Musk squeezed his eyes shut. He had never talked about Nevada's death publicly. Not really. People knew, of course, but he had never let himself sit with it, because if he did, he wasn't sure he'd survive it. You're scared, Keanu said softly, as if reading his thoughts. Musk's throat tightened. He almost denied it, almost brushed it off with a joke, but something about the weight of this moment, the stillness, the simplicity, made him answer truthfully. Yeah, he whispered. I think I am. Keanu didn't rush him, didn't offer some cheap motivational line. He simply let the silence breathe, let the moment exist. And for the first time in his life, Elon Musk let himself sit in the silence. And it nearly broke him. While Musk wrestled with his inner demons, the internet exploded. Across every platform, the conversation had shifted. The usual noise of viral trends and tech debates had been drowned out by something deeper. You Are Here hit 10 million posts in 24 hours. Celebrities, influencers, and even politicians weighed in. People across the globe started pausing, questioning their own endless chase for more. In Silicon Valley, tech leaders called emergency meetings, wondering if this movement would affect their business models. In Hollywood, scriptwriters rewrote endings, adding depth they had long abandoned. In the quiet corners of the world, people who had never questioned their place in the machine finally stopped running, because one actor, one moment, and 6 words had sparked something no one saw coming. And at the center of it all, Elon Musk sat in the dim glow of his office, staring at his reflection in the glass. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about Mars. He was thinking about himself. The sun was beginning to rise over Los Angeles, casting a quiet golden glow over Elon Musk's office. He hadn't slept. All night he had sat in silence, staring at the note in his hand. The city stretched out below him, a testament to human ambition, a reflection of his own relentless drive. But now, for the first time, he wasn't looking at the world with thoughts of what's next. He was just here. The phone call with Keanu had ended hours ago, but his words still lingered in Musk's mind. You just have to know why you're moving. For years, Musk had believed that his purpose was to push humanity forward, to ensure its survival, to reach beyond Earth, to become more. But in doing so, had he ever truly allowed himself to just be? He exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. He hadn't, and that realization felt heavier than anything he had ever launched into space. Later that morning, Musk did something unexpected. He opened Twitter, not to post memes, not to argue with critics, but to speak from his heart. Elon Musk. For years, I believed humanity's worth was in its ability to push forward. I still do. But last night, I realized something. We also need to remember that simply being alive, being here, is enough. The tweet exploded in 500,000 likes, 10,000 comments, news outlets rushing to cover it. Then came another tweet. Ask Elon Musk. I have spent my life chasing the stars, but today, for the first time, I am looking at the ground beneath my feet, and it is beautiful. The world was stunned. This wasn't the usual Musk. No snark, no bravado, just raw human honesty. And it wasn't just words. That week, Musk quietly took an unannounced leave from work. No press conferences, no grand explanation. Just time. Time to be with his children without distractions. Time to sit in a park without thinking about meetings. Time to feel human. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about the next launch. He was thinking about this moment. His impact was immediate. Investors panicked at first, worried Musk was losing his edge. But within weeks, Tesla and SpaceX stocks rose because a leader who was truly present made better decisions. Silicon Valley CEOs started attending meditation retreats, publicly admitting they had never really stopped before. You Are Here transformed from a trend into a global movement. Mental health organizations used the moment to push for better work-life balance. Corporations started reevaluating their toxic productivity standards. Even in schools, teachers began telling students, "You don't have to earn your worth. You're enough." Keanu Reeves, watching all of this unfold, simply smiled. He hadn't planned any of this. He had just spoken the truth. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. Months later, Musk found himself alone in a quiet field outside of Austin, Texas. The stars shone above him, the same ones he had dreamed of reaching since childhood. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about Mars. He was thinking about now. He pulled out the worn slip of paper, the one he had carried with him ever since Keanu had given it to him. You are here. That is enough. He smiled. For the first time in his life, he truly believed it. And as he lay back on the grass staring up at the endless sky, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The world hadn't stopped innovating. SpaceX still launched rockets. Tesla still built cars. The future still raced forward. But now a new kind of balance had emerged. People still chased their dreams, but they no longer believed they had to suffer endlessly to prove their worth. And it all started with one sentence. One moment. One man who had built his life on momentum, learning to stand still. Elon Musk, the man who once believed the future was among the stars, had finally discovered an entire universe within himself. And for the first time, that was enough.